Today we have Bob Bizans as our speaker, and all I can say is I'm super excited about it. It's a real treat. Welcome, Bob, and I can't wait to hear your message. It's all yours.
Good morning, Bob, alcoholic, sober through the grace of God and AA since the 10th of December 1967, and for that I'm very grateful. As wonderful as celebrating 54 years of sobriety, we also celebrated 54 years of marriage on December 2nd. So those are two gifts of the program, extraordinary. I think I've been instructed to give a 40-minute talk. That's what I'm going to do unless you interrupt me soon and tell me to do something differently, and then we'll chat about that. I started drinking when I was a freshman in high school, 4'11". I found second smallest kid in my class. Obviously insecure when I'm one of 7 kids that was a preemie. Mom sent the oldest of us to school early to get us the hell out of the house. Our parents were the Second World War people that worked hard, drank hard, played hard, and made life look pretty easy, pretty attractive, and we copied them. And in high school, I went to a military academy on a college campus, and we drank in high school like most people drink. We had fraternities, and we did a lot of drinking, a lot of false ID cards, all that sort of thing. By the time I finished high school, my drinking was a very, very loud conversation in our home. I love my parents, love my brothers and sisters. My brothers and sisters, there are now 3 of us that are members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and my father was for quite a number of years before he passed. I had a chance to go away to school. I was a pretty good student, and I thought my drinking would become normalized. I thought I was in trouble because I didn't think I was doing anything different than my parents and their friends were doing, but I had a chance to go away. I went away to school. My drinking did not become normal. It became a lot worse. I became the class drunk at Notre Dame. Now, to be the class drunk at Notre Dame, you have to have a few problems. And it started out as a good student and ended up I was in civil engineering, carrying 25 credits a semester, going to school 1 day a week, maybe. And by the end of my senior year, I walked out, or middle of my senior year, I walked out in the yearbook with my class. I just ran my string up. I just couldn't do it any longer. And I was in ROTC, and I was due to be commissioned. I had to get a medical release. The medical release I got was for alcoholism. I was diagnosed an alcoholic when I was 18 years old. That seemed nonsensical to me. It just didn't fit. That word didn't seem to fit. But I was diagnosed an alcoholic by my psychiatrist, who knew more about it than I did, obviously. I came back home to a set of very disappointed parents. And when I finished school at a local university, when I finished school, my dad asked me to leave home, my hero. He said, "We love you, but we do not know what to do with you." And this next part is the last year of my drinking. So I'm waiting to see what the draft board's going to do with me. I'm now no longer exempt. The Vietnam War is on, and I'm going to go now. And I got a job at a liquor store. I worked at the liquor store for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. I got in trouble, and I'm drinking a fifth a day. I'm just a mess. No one knows where I am, which is just fine with me. I quit that job. I got let go. I went over to Minneapolis, lived on, took a job as a waiter at a private club. I'm living sort of on Skid Row, $10 a night rooms, and I'm shacked up with people that I work with. You know, Dr. Seuss, that child author, those are actual photographs of people I live with during the last year of my drinking. And I got in a fight one night, and I got my face kicked in. I got fired as a waiter. I had no place to go, and I went back to my family and asked if I could move back in the house. And they allowed that I could. They asked me not to drink. I promised not to drink, but when you're drinking the better part of a fifth a day, when you stop, all of a sudden you're in trouble. I didn't know that. I was 22, 23 years old. And Linda, Sharon's on the screen. She's going to leave. Come over and say hello. Sharon Parker Crane. And so I quit that job and moved in the house. When I moved back in the house, I was just tired of being the family jerk as they were of having me be the family jerk. And I was as much a mystery to me as it was to them. I look like, my mother always said, "You're not very bright, Bob. Dress well." So I look good. You know, I look like I could get the job done. You'd expect a lot more of me, but everything I touched, it just turned to crap. It was very confusing to me. But I got accepted into officer candidate school. I was getting ready to go to Vietnam, and they called me and informed me they lost my file and asked me to take the physical for the fourth time. I took the physical again, and they failed me for a hearing problem, so now I don't have to go to Vietnam. I got back together with Linda, who's my very lovely wife today. We became engaged and married. I bought my first car. I got a job as an executive trainee with a manufacturing concern. I thought, wow, I'm going to be a grown-up. Only I couldn't quit drinking. Just before I went back to my senior year at Notre Dame, I was beaten up, robbed, rolled, pistol whipped, shot at, thrown out of the second story of a building, and ended up in the state of shock in the psych ward. And they were not going to let me go back to school. I talked my way out of that. I went back to school. And I quit drinking for about 2 months, 2 or 3 months. I can't remember anymore. And I'm going to interrupt for a second because Linda just stepped into the room. Sharon. Just wanted to say hi.
Good to see you. I love you. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas, everyone else. Thanks.
And I quit drinking for a couple of months, and I thought I proved that, number one, I could quit. And number two, I'm still an asshole. I'm not going to school. I'm still, not taking care of my responsibilities. And I thought I proved that there's got to be something else wrong with me. I don't know what the hell's going on, but it is, it's bad. And I thought if the heat got big enough, I could quit. Now I'm engaged and married. In my home, if you didn't take care of your wife, you better move. My family liked Linda better than they liked me, and so I was in trouble, and I did not know how to get out of it. And so I had this job this trainee job for a couple of months, actually for 6 months, and I got fired, or I walked out before they fired me. When I went back to make amends with the guy who hired me, he said, "God, you interviewed so well." And I said, yeah, we do. We have performance issues, but we interview well. And I got a sales job. I had the sales job about 2 months, and I woke up one afternoon, hugging the toilet, doing my morning exercises, and that was my moment of truth. It would be difficult for me to explain. I don't think I have to explain how disgusted I was with myself. I called AA, and they sent out 2 guys. They had a restaurant at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. One guy had 6 months, and one guy had 6 years. They sat me down in the booth and said, "We're from AA. We've had a drinking problem. Found an answer for it. Want to share it with you. Hope it helps you. If it doesn't help you, don't worry. It helps us. It helps us talking to guys like you." And they told me their stories. Now, I had been put in front of every kind of help that a young person could, doctors, lawyers, Indian chief, bishop, priests, nuns, judges, psychologists, proctologists. I mean, everything that you could possibly do. And, but I'd never been in front of anybody else who had a drinking problem. And in a matter of about 45 minutes, these 2 guys opened my soul. It was just extraordinary. We have many traditions in AA, the most wonderful of which we share our experience, strength, and hope. Not our ideology. We don't preach, not our beliefs. We share our experience, and there's a strength in sharing your experience that is nowhere else. And when I went to my first meeting, I drank twice after walking in AA, once on a business trip to the West Coast, and once after 3 months of sobriety on our honeymoon in Mexico. I had my last drink on the airplane on the way home. I don't know. My sponsor sat me down. My sponsor was the most active guy in our group. We had what we call squads. We met 7 days a week. And he was the most active guy in that group. The Second World War vet lost half his crew in a bomb disposal unit in Italy. And his wife ended up being Linda's sponsor. And I had him for 43 years. And in 43 years, I never called that we could come over for coffee that they didn't say yes. Never. I mean, they were one of those AA homes where the coffee pot was always on, and it was just better than. My sponsor sat me down and said, alcoholism is a disease, physical, mental, and spiritual. Once you cross the line from chronic drinking to alcoholism, your alcoholism affects you all the time, when you are drinking and when you are not drinking. The idea that my alcoholism affected me when I was not drinking was an extraordinarily new idea to me. With all my psychiatric care, with all the different help, I never got the idea that my alcoholism was active when I was not physically drinking. He said, what we do in AA once we take our last drink or drug is we use the 12 recovery steps of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to find a different way to live that's better than the way we lived before, so we don't have to go back to drugs or booze to do something for us that we're unwilling or unable to do for ourselves. If you don't change, you will not stay. Gettysburg Address at Alcoholics Anonymous. So when I came back from Mexico, I turned myself into my sponsor, and I thought, okay, I buy it. I'm an alcoholic. Well, if I'm an alcoholic and AA's got the answer, I got a half a dozen other things that are going on in my life that are just driving me nuts. And if AA's got the answer, they ought to clear up. And it might take a year. Yeah, it might take a year. It might take 55 years is what the hell it might take. So I became this very, very active member of the AA. I'm going to 7 meetings a week. I'm, started to sponsor guys. I'm making 12-step calls. I'm the 10-minute speaker. They're bringing me to different groups. I'm talking at detoxes and prisons and all that sort of stuff. And I didn't have a very good sense of my defects of character. My first inventory was very shallow. It was kind of touching on the worst things that I had done. It was kind of like a confession. And but into my second year, I started to get a really good taste of the issues. Now, the issues I had, some of you have heard my talks in the past. I was a money spender. I spent more money than I made, so I was always in financial trouble. I had trouble getting up in the morning, because I'm going to bed, late. I got a gambling problem, more of a hobby, 4 or 5 hours a day, 4 or 5 days a week. But I'm making $5,000 a year playing backgammon, and that's was like a second job. I was making damn near as much money playing backgammon as I was in my job, which I wasn't doing. And we started to have children, and I was an unhelpful husband. My wife was a registered nurse. She's getting up at 6 to go to work. And, I'm an AA. I just do an AA at every opportunity. It was the only place in my life that seemed to work. Everybody's patting me on the head. And my biggest issue was work. I had trouble getting to work, staying at work, and working at work. Other than that, I was a good worker. And I don't know what it was in my life. When my mother always said, you're not very bright, but I'm just so. Why I was so attracted to the easier, softer way. I was always, I was a good student, but I didn't study. I mean, I was, of the 12 guys in my class that went down Notre Dame, I had the best test grades going down, but I was the only one who didn't finish. That's the story of my life. I'm a great starter, but a poor finisher. And so here I am in AA, which I think I finally found my people. I finally found the place. It's finally going to get better. And here I am in my second and third and fourth year of sobriety, having issues with money, with sex, with gambling, with parenting, with being a husband. And when I came to AA, I had a wall built up around me, and I said, you like me, but you only like what I'll let you see about me. If you could see everything about me, you wouldn't like me. I don't like me. Who knows more what a crummy, lousy, insufficient person I am than me? I'm walking around comparing my inside with your outside. But at some point in time, when I came to AA, I started to tear that wall down. I tore it all the way down when I did my fifth step. And I made a discovery. The discovery was that I'm not unique. My personality is unique, but not my illness, not my behavior, not my experience, and not my feelings. And I started to have a sense of hope that what worked for you could work for me. Very strong, wonderful idea. But now I'm sober 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I'm continuing to have these significant defects of character. And I have trouble explaining it to this day. I look back on it, I think my idea was, is you get me sober, I'll learn how to work. You get me sober, I'll learn how to be a dad. You get me sober, I'll learn how to be a husband. Well, it wasn't working. And I'm telling my sponsor 65% of what's going on. And I know in California or Florida, wherever the heck we are, that you tell your sponsor everything. But I'm only telling myself 65% of what's going on. Life is lived forward, but it's understood backwards. I did not see it when I was in it. And I'm getting, it seemed like the story of my life that now I'm in AA, working my butt off, sponsoring people. I've got all the merit badges, and I'm going backwards. It really, I of course wasn't going backwards. It was happening to me as you were getting me more honest, and I couldn't hide. Even from my psyche, I couldn't hide the unmanageability of my life, but I'm sober, going to AA, trying to do the steps, and I'm still a mess. And finally, when I got close, and somewhere in my 7th or 8th year, I was in trouble. Serious, I'm thinking about swallowing a gun. I'm not thinking about drinking, but I am so tired of having like a built-in failure mechanism. What the hell is wrong with me that one of my friends said, Bob, you were born on third base, and congratulate yourself for hitting a triple. I mean, I have a great family, I have great education, and I'm a mess. And I knew that I had to find out what God had to do with Wednesday. I knew a lot about God. I mean, I'd been in parochial education from grade school all the way through university. And I knew I had to go turn myself in, but I thought, shit, I just got to get rid of 1 or 2 of these problems before I turn myself in. And I wasn't able to. And finally, out of desperation, around my 8th year, and interestingly enough, Linda had a spiritual surrender again at both of us were, she's living with this unhelpful husband, and she's just, so she got kind of a small nervous breakdown, and I had a spiritual collapse. And I went back to the steps for the 3rd time. And powerless and unmanageable, I mean, anybody with a room temperature IQ could have figured out that I was powerless and unmanageable. What surprised me is step 2. I had lost step 2, going to 7 meetings a week with the unmanageability of my life. I believed it for you. I believed it for us. I did not believe it for me, because I'm 8 years sober and my pants are on fire. What the hell is wrong with me? Or what the hell is wrong with what I'm doing in AA? And I think when you're in trouble, you get more or less active. I got more active. I started to see people with bigger problems than I had, with smiles on their faces, walking through walls I was trying to avoid with dignity and grace. And I came to believe again that God would restore Bob to sanity. I took step 3 for the 3rd time, but I took it on my knees with my sponsor in his office. We didn't do that in Minnesota as much as we all do now, of course. And then I did my 3rd, 4th step, which is the best 4th step I think I've ever taken. But I was in so much pain. There was no idea of protection or lying or denial. I was ready to just let it all go. And then when I went to do my 5th step, the previous 2 I had done with clergy. But because I was a conference goer and I heard all these people in California talk, and everybody was doing their 5th step with their sponsor, I went to my sponsor and said, I want to do my 5th step with you. And I said, I feel like I'm dying of thirst lying next to a lake. I said, if you came to my house with my problem, I think I could give you some help and direction about what to do. I either can't or won't do it. I am so bloody sick and tired of can't or won't do it that I could just spit. I think I'm ready to do whatever you would recommend to me, so be careful. And I did my 5th step with him. And we talked, cried a little bit at the end of that 5th step. So he wants me to go to a psychologist that works with business people. My sponsor was a mailman. And he said, I want you to go start to have that conversation. I want you to bring that conversation back to me, and we can recapitulate it with respect to the program. I did not want outside help. We didn't do that almost at all in those days. And it seemed to me like I was admitting I had a lousy program. Hello? I mean, something wasn't working. So I get a reference to a psychologist, and he wants to get my parents involved. I said, no. I said, my parents have been over involved in my life. If you can't help me, get me someone who can. Then he wanted to get Linda involved. I thought, oh, crap. When your wife's in the room, there's a lot of information that doesn't seem necessary to be in the room. And a lot of it's embarrassing. So, yeah, I'll get my wife involved. I even wanted the kids involved. When they were young, I still don't understand that. So I'm in the room with the psychologist and my wife and the kids, I guess. And I'm explaining that my company's going bankrupt. I mean, I'm going to lose everything I have. I'm going to go broke. They're going to put my name on the paper and say, I'm going to lose everything. And the psychologist looks at me and he says, why are you so afraid of failing? And I wanted to strike him. I mean, I felt like literally like he struck me. And I said, look, you're a doctor. You know, I lived in this town all my life. I'm in the investment business. If I go broke, my career is done. I'm going to lose everything I had. I said, you are a doctor. You go broke. You just wait 6 months, take your little sign, walk down the hall, pound it on another door. Within 6 months, you're making $100 grand. I'm going to lose everything. Nod your head up and down if you understand that. And he said, he looked at my wife and he said, if Bob lost everything he had, would he lose you? And my wife said, no, wouldn't lose me. He asked the kids the same question, no. If you can't lose, you can't play. Now, what I discovered in that man's office with 8 years of sobriety, after doing my third inventory, was fear. Now, you'd think a guy who was doing his third inventory would know more about fear than I knew. We weren't as good with the book in those days, and fear had to do with external, snake dogs and tall buildings. Here I am, apoplectically in fear about being a husband, about being a father, about work, about failure, about success. I'm swimming in fear. I mean, I'm one of those two fishes that Chamberlain talked about. When one fish looks over and says, isn't the ocean wonderful? And the other fish looks over and says, what's the ocean? About a week after that, I'm in my living room having one of the crappiest days I'd ever spent. I got up late, I went to work late, I left early, got in the backgammon game, I won $500. I missed dinner. I missed the AA meeting. I got in a fight with my wife and I slapped one of the kids. One of those things you'd like to have videotaped and sent to the General Service Office to show what 8 years of sobriety can do. And I said, gee, it happened again. I said, it happened again. Weren't you there? I'm saying, yeah, I'm there. But it's so habitual that I don't even think about it. It's like I'm in a blackout. And all of a sudden I realized that was a bunch of horse crap. My life was the way it was because I designed it that way. I sounded like a guy who wanted to quit gambling. I wanted to gamble whenever the hell I wanted to gamble, and I had problems because of gambling. I wanted money without work. I wanted my wife and children's love and affection without spending time with them. Not a very good design. And that night I realized that I had tried as hard as I knew how to try to clean my act up, and I had failed. I don't think I would have been able to say those words as succinctly as that at any other time than that night in my living room. And I was given the opportunity to take the 6th and the 7th step of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I built my wall back up sober in AA. Thank you very much for helping my drinking problem, stay out of my sex life, stay out of my marriage, stay out of my work, stay out of my parenting, stay out of my husbandry. And brick by brick, over 8 years, I built the damn wall back up, sober in AA. And that night, I stood naked in front of my life. When I came in AA, I stood naked in front of my alcoholism, and it changed me. That night, I stood naked in front of my life, and it altered me. I took the 6th and the 7th step. That night, I quit gambling. That night, the next day, I turned the checkbook over to my wife, and I went on an allowance. She gave me $100 a week, cash. Now I'm up to 200, so things are getting better, guys. I made appointments with my sponsor about going to work, staying at work, and working at work. I spent thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours trying to learn how to be a better parent. I think being a parent is like having a bowling alley installed in your head. I think it takes 125% of whatever you have. The instruction manual is a little skinny. My life transformed that day in my living room at about 8 years. It was a second surrender. And it has been moving in that general direction since, and it has been extraordinary. During my first 7 or 8 years in AA, I tried to clean my act up and failed. I tried and failed. Now, I had some success. I really was, by some measures, a very good member of AA, but I was ineffective. I'm a good member of AA, but I was not able to get the full measure of the steps. You know, so I was both those things. I was both a good member, but ineffective. And all of a sudden, my life opened up and grace came in. And I was no longer did I have any protection or barriers between me and what God wanted me to do. You know, and as I say, my life started to transform. I've always been smart. I've just never been effective. That's a really lousy combination. It's like you have you know, well, it's like I was mentally ill, but I wasn't ill enough not to know it was happening to me, and it was just horrible. And so all of a sudden, my life took off like it was on a rocket ship. The guy that didn't know what to do. So the other thing I did is I hired a woman to call me at 5:30 in the morning to get me up. How stupid. You know, I'm not getting up till 9 before this, but now I'm getting up at 5:30. So I go to Mass 6 days a week. And after Mass in the back, I go and I say to God, I don't know what to do. Give me your mind. Which was BS. I knew what to do. I just couldn't or wouldn't do it. Damn it. I couldn't or wouldn't do it. But you know what? He gave me his mind. And all of a sudden, the guy that was ineffective was able to make sales calls. I was a salesman who didn't make sales calls. All of a sudden, I was the guy who was doing the financial analysis and the deals we were doing. And all of a sudden, I'm becoming the husband that I think Linda always wanted me to be. All of a sudden, I'm doing what I had the examples of the people around me to do, and my life started to transform. It was extraordinary. And I won't bore you with the rest. I mean, I started to make a lot of money, big house, big cars. I'm, driving the Mercedes, overdressed at the meeting. I'm thinking God has blessed me for what a wonderful AA I am. How would you like me in your group? God, there's problems with failure, but there's also problems with success. I mean, there's just problems everywhere. And, and then about in the mid 80s, I went broke. I lost $10 million. I lost the big house. And I don't think God had the real estate collapse to teach me a lesson, but I think in the real estate collapse, I had to learn who I was with money and who I was without money. I think in every negative event, seemingly negative event for each of us, there's a lesson to learn in it. And my life has gone on. I was allowed to keep the business. We negotiated our way out of trouble. And Linda and I have 3 sons that are, I don't know, I know their names, I just don't know how old they are. But Bill is 53, I think, and he's 33 years sober. And Peter's just turned 50 a couple of weeks ago, and he's got 30 years. And Daniel had 18, and he went back. He's doing a little dope, smoking a little dope. But his wife's wonderful. He just got married, and we had our 3rd grandchild. Our life is about as good as it could possibly be. If I had, so it would be hard for me to explain how wonderful my life is. But to be 54 years sober and to be 54 years married and really be in love with my wife, to be the kind of guy that could be in love, to have a great relationship with my children, which at times was troubled, and to be able to retire, all those sorts of things. I just am overwhelmed sometimes with gratitude that I stumbled into Alcoholics Anonymous at such a young age and ran into and ran with some of the greatest members of AA that we've ever had. That I was that my sponsor got me going to conferences, and I started hearing the talks and the communication. And when we talk about standing on the shoulders of giants, certainly Sharon, you've been exposed, and all you guys You know, I mean, it's been a hell of a ride. I get asked quite a bit sometimes about, you know, are you worried about Alcoholics Anonymous as an old guy? And my answer is no. I think we're healthier today than we've ever been. I think we're better with the book and the steps and sponsorship than we've ever been. And secondly, where the hell else would you go? There's no place else to go. I mean, there's a few places. Some people get it done in church, and some people get it done at the mission. But in large numbers, I mean, I think the evidence is in with the gift that God gave us to recover from the problem of drug dependency and alcoholism is AA. If I had a message to give anybody, it is that there's a tendency as we stay sober for a long time in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, the religion of today is psychology. And we start to rely unwittingly on what we know, in quotes. Well, knowing is the booby prize. We all know the words. If I ask anybody on the screen to give a 10-minute talk on any step, almost all of you could do that. But the fact is, at different periods of time in our lives, we have a great deal of difficulty demonstrating the spiritual strength and principles in the steps. They are not mechanical. The words will not get it done. The words are the donkey you ride to get to the house, but you have to dismount the donkey to walk through the door to start to have the full spiritual experience that the program offers. And there's a way of being in that process. There's a way of cooperating in that process. There's a way of being in partnership with your higher power. And it has to do with surrender. It has to do with humility, and it has to do with honesty, self-honesty. And if you've been around for any length of time, we've all had problems, periods of time where we cannot snap our fingers and get back in Kansas. It is not something that we control. What's the answer? Surrender. How do you tell someone to surrender? It's of God. It is not, you can't word it very well. Now, our book words it as well as anything that we have available to us. And we word it pretty well with each other when we're working with each other. But you cannot snap it into place on demand. And yet, the other thing that I want to say, we have absolutely no trouble telling a newcomer that they can't do it alone, that we need each other, we need the program, we need the book, we need the steps. But there's a hell of a lot of times where we're doing it alone. There's a hell of a lot of times when we think we got the answer. And a lot of us want to go back, when we're in trouble, we want to go back to step 4. We want information. Anybody missing any information about their serious defects of character? You know, I don't think so. None of us have too many serious defects of character that aren't years old. Some of us on the screen are having issues that if we don't alter them, we're going to deeply damage our marriages and relationships, or work, or our children, or our retirement, or our finances. And yet we've been struggling with some of the answers. And I would like to say that we're in the same boat that we are when we tell the newcomer. We can't do it alone. It's an inside job. And once we contact and get that spiritual connection, we get connected to the mainframe. I mean, we get connected with a way of knowing that is so powerful that we stop digging the hole and we start having a way of knowing that is life altering. And it is in that, it is in that magical place that we get, I gotta plug my computer in. It is in that magical place that our knower is connected to God. And in that place, we have a strength and a peace that we have no other place. What we know about the steps, knowing is in the mind, but we have to have an intuitive connection. And intuition is deeper than mentality. Intuition is deeper than intelligence. There is a way of knowing that all of us, you almost can't explain it, but for those of us on the screen, we may not be able to explain it, but we know it. And that has been being able to have that connection, being able to have a pause when I'm having some difficulty, being able to stay connected. I just asked my fourth person to be a sponsor of mine about a year and a half ago, and he's got 31 years of sobriety. All I needed was a great member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and he's a great member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and someone that I allow to have that role in my life, that I subordinate, that I have some verticality in our relationship, or when I'm having a conversation with them, I want to see what he brings to me in that process. And that has been a privilege. I've been taught how to be a sponsee, and that's an important part of my life today. I love you guys. I love the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm done talking, so we can go back to the meeting. Thank you for my life.
Thank you so much, Bob. It's wonderful. I was thinking that